Welcome back to the Deep Dig of Sports Pod. I'm your host, Drew. My other host right over there.
What's up? It's D. Good to see you again. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to drop some comments below and make sure you subscribe because we are coming down the home stretch here with college football. The weeks are just ticking by.
Georgia beats Tennessee, and that one was close kind of till the end there, and then Georgia started to pull away. And you see Georgia's coach talking a little shit at the end, saying, "Oh well, you guys try to come out here and play a SEC schedule and go on the road in the SEC." Got a little bit of people talking on the Twitter.
He's 100% right, though. I mean, he is. He's 100% right. Georgia has had a tough schedule compared to, I mean, realistically, I was even telling you this when we were watching games. It's like the SEC is carrying every single week. The SEC is carrying matchups. They have very interesting matchups. And you look at like the Big 10, the Big 12 is interesting, but it's like, okay, none of these teams are actual like contenders. You want the Big 10 to have big matchups, and just none of the good teams are playing each other. It's just cupcake after cupcake after cupcake on everybody's schedule. And I think he has a valid point that they have a very tough schedule in the SEC.
And I seen someone trying to make the argument, but like, "Oh well, didn't you see Penn State go on the road against Auburn?" I'm like, Auburn, like one of the worst teams in the conference. That's your argument that Penn State goes on the road and beats Auburn,
I
and
mean,
then
they
you
tried. I mean, they tried.
and,
These are all scheduled well in advance as well. So I understand the thought process in that. Like, hey, we tried to schedule this. We tried to schedule an SEC opponent.
and then I agree with what you're saying with the Big Ten is the primetime matchups for the Big Ten have not been there on the schedule in comparison at all to the SEC or even the Big 12. The Big 12, I feel like every week in the evening, I'm watching an amazing Big 12 matchup, and the Big 10 is just not. I mean, even this week, Oregon takes on Wisconsin, and that was a nail biter, and it's just a slog of a game. It's 16-13 Oregon.
Yeah. And I think something needs to be done about these conferences moving forward. I just think they're getting too big to the point where none of the good teams are going to face each other at all. And it's going to be like, okay, who do you have on your schedule and how can we compare it to like what we're going? Because how are you going to compare, let's say, Penn State to Indiana when they both lose to Ohio State? It's like, okay, well, I don't know. They both look good against random teams, but they both lost to Ohio State. Who do you pick? Who would be the higher seed in that one? Like, I have no idea how you judge it.
Yeah, and then I know we were talking about this earlier off camera, but you have Notre Dame over here without a
Oh,
conference getting moved way up the list. And I mean, is it time where we just got to say Notre Dame pick a fucking conference and go get in there and play a legit schedule?
I don't even like. I don't want to be a Notre Dame hater, but I'm becoming a Notre Dame hater just because of their fans. Get into a schedule. Stop playing like, oh, well, we can go out there and beat any team that you say. And the SEC, they play nothing. Look at Bama playing Mercer. Okay, but Bama also had really tough games on their schedule. Notre Dame hasn't had anything. Their first win, which was the biggest win, is going to be an SEC team. So if you want to sit here and like compare notes and do one for one, we're not going to. And I know that the rankings already came out as of right now, and they're sitting there at number 6. They are not the number 6 team in the nation. This is bullshit. I don't want to sit here and act like they're a good team when they lost to a MAC school. Like, get out of here with that. Get into a conference so that way when you get into the playoffs, it's because you did something. It's because either you won the conference or you looked good against good opponents. Don't sit here and tell me that you're a good team just because you beat up on a bunch of nobodies. And I really hope, like, now I'm hoping they get in and just get dog walked. Like that's my wish. I hope that, but I know that they have this matchup coming up with Army. I hope Army. God bless the troops.
Yeah, this is gonna be their toughest matchup in a while with Army, and I'm pulling for Army here, but I would just want to wrap up here talking about the ACC because SMU wins a tough one against Boston College. Clemson wins a last second one against Pittsburgh with Klubnik running a crazy touchdown in. I really I could not say who is going to go into the playoff from the ACC right now. It is a toss up for me.
It's pretty crazy. I don't know what the tiebreakers are between Clemson and Miami because they both have one loss in the ACC, I believe, and SMU is actually undefeated in conference. So I don't know going down the stretch if everything stays the same, who ends up getting into that championship game if SMU continues to take care of business and remain undefeated in the conference. And if not, and we have 3 one-loss teams, how do you decide who gets in? It's gonna be a shit show.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk about this when we talk about the playoff brackets later in the week, but do you think with 12 teams going into playoff that we are going to be satisfied being like, "You know what? Enough of these teams got in," or are we still going to be like, why did these 3 or 4 teams not make it?"
I think people are always gonna feel like that. They're always gonna be like, "Oh, my team was just there. Like, why couldn't we're gonna leave off probably 1, 2 loss SEC team. You know what I mean? And that team's gonna feel slighted, but at the end of the day, you have to reward conferences. You have to make these things matter for the regular season to matter. And so I understand the thought process there. I don't think that it should be a first round bye. I think it should just be an automatic bid, just like how the NCAA tournament for basketball is, where you get a bid, but you don't get any special treatment or anything like that. I still, yeah, I know there's going to be teams that are going to be left off just because of the sheer amount of chaos that we still have and teams that are still available for playoff contention.
Yeah, well, and even now you have people saying, "Well, South Carolina could actually get in," and that's like way down the list. So
That's a 3 loss. Yeah, no, there's no way. There's
there's
no
a lot
way.
of SEC schools that are gonna feel like they should have been in and are left out. Or is there gonna be like so many SEC schools getting in just on their name and on their conference and leave out some of these other guys who maybe deserve it a little bit more, or maybe they just didn't have a strength of schedule as much as the SEC?
We'll see next week. Like, if Army does go undefeated and they beat Notre Dame, but Notre Dame only drops like 3 spots in the committee's rankings, like that takes away another spot, and you have to put Army into the playoffs, right? But does it knock Notre Dame all the way out to where they're
It
not in the
should.
playoff
It
anymore?
should. I've been
I
saying
mean,
this
but
for a
we
few
see that they
weeks.
overvalue Notre Dame for just because they wear gold helmets.
But yeah, I've been saying for a few weeks now is they're undervaluing losing to unranked teams, like or lesser ranked teams. Like if you lose Tennessee lose to Georgia, yeah, knock them down a little bit. But come on, it's Georgia and they're ranked right behind them. But losing to an unranked team should knock you like more than 10 spots down off on the list, in my eyes.
Okay, but how do we value then you getting a win, but it not looking great? Like Oregon is ranked number 1. They eke one out against Wisconsin. And yeah, Wisconsin has looked good, up till this point, or it looked more improved up until this point, but it's still a lower unranked team. Do you take that into account, or do you like, hey, every team gets one of them? Let's go ahead and because even Texas struggled for a good portion of that game against Arkansas. Yeah, they pull it out and they get a 10-point win, but you've seen weaknesses with Texas, and they haven't really played anybody. So, how do you feel about that? Like,
I just think,
if we're
yeah,
gonna
like
knock unranked losses, like, are we gonna if you struggle against them, we're gonna knock you too?
it's still a win. Win's a win in the win column. Like that's all that matters to me. But in Oregon's case, like who else would you move up? Like Ohio State, who was at home this week, like Texas, who also struggled against Arkansas. Like no one else really went to claim that spot. So I mean, they got the win. They secured their spot. In my eyes, if you win the game, you should not drop anywhere. Like you should be where you're at. You at least, if you're not going to move up, you shouldn't drop down. That's kind of how I feel.
I don't think all wins are created equal, if we're gonna be honest. Like, it's not a 3-win a 3-point win against Wisconsin should not count more than, Ohio State blowing out Northwestern. And yeah, it's Northwestern, it's a lower opponent, but that's what you're supposed to do.
Here's gonna be you're gonna hate this take because I know how you feel about like Indiana and everything. To me, if you go undefeated in a
Stupid.
full Division 1 college football season, you should be in the playoff regardless of your schedule, regardless of how you looked in those games. If you go undefeated, you run the table, and there's no other teams that are undefeated, I think you should get in. I think you should have a spot.
Okay, so let's go back to last year, how they had Florida State. You want Florida State in the 14 playoff, or
In a
even how
12
they
in a
expand it
12 team
in
playoff,
12
yeah.
team?
Yeah.
Okay,
In a 12
then
team
they
playoff.
get boat raced, and everyone's like, okay, well, that was a waste of a fucking playoff spot.
Why are we doing this where you're doing the argument, fucking Kirk Street over here? Oh, why are we gonna put this team in? We know they'll lose. Oh, we'll know. Oh yeah, because we knew Arkansas was gonna beat Tennessee. Oh, we knew this team can't. Kentucky was gonna be who they beat, Georgia or whatever. Like we don't know that teams are just gonna straight up win in the playoff. So if you earned your spot to be there, you should be in there, and you earned your spot to get boat raced. Like
Okay, well
if you're
then,
gonna get
okay,
boat
by the
raced
same token, then Liberty, who went undefeated last year, I believe, should have been in the playoff.
in the 12 team playoff, yes.
That's fucking stupid. No. Not all
Yes.
conferences are created equal. Not all schedules are created equal. Just because you won every game on a cupcake schedule, give that schedule to someone else on the team or on the playoff ranking, and you know they're going undefeated as well. Like that's
You
kind of
can
stupid.
you can go to the Mountain West too. You don't got to go collect your check in the SEC. You go to the Big 12. Get the fuck out of the SEC then. You don't want to you want to collect an SEC check? Get out of the SEC. There's a million teams in the SEC.
I think the conferences are getting overbloated as well, but that's dumb. That is so dumb.
Make sure you subscribe, comment, like all that good stuff.
All right, later.